Let me tell you what actually holds a hospital together, because it is not what you think. It is not the doctors, God love them. It is not the machines that beep, or the fancy new wing with the donor's name on it, or the people in the nice offices upstairs who have never once held a frightened man's hand while he waited for news he was scared to hear. A hospital is held together by women like me, the ones who have been on the same floor for 30 years, the ones who know which patient in which bed is about to take a turn before any monitor on earth will tell you, the ones who hold the whole thing up so quietly that everybody forgets we are holding it at all. And the day my hospital decided it could do without me, it found out, the hard and expensive way, exactly what I had been carrying. That is the story I want to tell you tonight. Not because I need it to be proven right, because I want every woman out there who has been called just a something to hear how it ends. My name is Marva Sinclair. I am 53 years old, and for 32 of those years, I have been a nurse in the city of St. Louis, Missouri. The last 19 of them, I was the charge nurse on a medical surgical floor we all just called 5 West. If you have ever spent a long night in a hospital, you have met a woman like me, even if you never learned her name, because we are not the ones who introduce ourselves with a handshake and a title. We are the ones who notice your mama is cold and bring the warm blanket before she asks. I have sat with more dying people than I could ever count. In the small hours after the families had gone home to sleep, and somebody had to make sure no soul left this world alone. I have held hands that I knew would be cold by morning. I have prayed, quiet, under my breath, over patients of every faith and no faith at all. Not to convert a soul, just so there would be one more voice in the room loving them while they crossed over. That is in the job, and it is not in the job description. There is no billing code for it. The people upstairs have never once been able to see it, because you cannot put a number on the difference between a person who died afraid and alone and a person who died with a warm hand holding theirs. But the families saw it. The families always asked for me. They would call ahead and say, "Is Miss Marva on tonight?" And you have never heard relief like the relief in a frightened person's voice when the answer came back, yes. Before I go on, let me say something to a particular set of people listening tonight. If you are a nurse, an aide, a tech, a unit clerk, anybody who has ever been the glue in a place that did not bother to learn your name, tell me in the comments what you do and how long you have done it. I want to read it. I have a powerful feeling this room is going to fill up with people the world has been leaning on for years without once saying thank you. Now let me tell you who I am on that floor, so you understand what they threw away. I did not come up easy. I am not one of these nurses with the letters trailing behind their name like a kite tail. I went to a diploma program at night while I cleaned houses by day, because I had 2 babies and a husband who decided fatherhood was not for him, and I needed a trade that nobody could ever take from me. I studied my anatomy with a baby on my hip and another one doing homework across the same table, in a kitchen that smelled of other people's cleaning supplies, because that was the day's work that paid for the night's school. I failed my first licensing attempt by 2 questions, and I cried in the bathroom. And then I signed right back up, because giving up was a luxury meant for people with a safety net, and I did not have one. When I finally passed, I framed that license and hung it on the wall where my children would see it every single morning, so they would grow up knowing their mother was somebody, no matter what any house I cleaned had tried to make me feel. I do not tell you this for your sympathy. I tell you so you understand that by the time Brooke Maddox decided I was disposable, I had already survived being told I was nothing by people a great deal more frightening than her. She was just the most recent. She was not even the worst. I have an associate's degree and a license and 32 years, and there are people who will look at that resume and see a woman who never finished climbing. They are looking at the wrong thing, because what I have cannot be put on a resume. I have a kind of knowing that you only get one way, which is by being in the room, 10,000 nights, paying attention. I can walk onto a floor and tell you, just from the doorway, which of my patients is in trouble. Not from the chart. The chart tells you what already happened. The patient tells you what is about to. It is in the color of the skin around the mouth, the particular way a confused old man plucks at his blanket, the smell of a wound that is starting to go wrong a full day before the fever spikes. I have caught sepsis before the labs caught it. I have stood at a bedside and told a resident, "Son, call the doctor now, not in an hour, now," and been right enough times that the smart ones learned to move when I used that voice. I have trained half the nurses on that floor and, though they would not put it this way, a fair number of the young doctors too. A new resident does not learn medicine in a book. He learns it from a nurse who has watched 1,000 patients do the thing the book said they would not do. Let me give you just one of them. So the knowing has a face. Years back, a young woman came in after what should have been a routine surgery, and everything on paper said she was fine, stable, cleared. But when I walked past her room, something in me went still. She was a little too quiet, a little too gray around the lips, and she kept shifting like she could not get comfortable inside her own body. Every number said, "Leave her be." I did not leave her be. I called the surgeon and I told him I did not care what the monitor said. This girl was bleeding somewhere inside where none of us could see it, and he needed to come now, not in an hour. He grumbled, he came, and he opened her back up and found exactly that. A slow internal bleed that one more hour would have ended her. He never fully admitted I had been right. Surgeons of a certain age rarely do. But he never questioned me again either. That is the knowing. It does not show up on any chart. It shows up in a body that has paid attention for 30 years. And you cannot download it. And you cannot hire it for less. And you surely cannot replace it with a girl 10 months into the work, no matter how much cheaper she comes. I keep my first stethoscope in my locker. 30 years old. They do not even make them like this anymore. The tubing has gone soft and pale where my hands have held it. And I have heard, through that one piece of rubber, somewhere north of 10,000 human hearts. Some of them I heard stop. Some of them I heard come back. That stethoscope is not equipment to me. It is a record of every person I ever leaned in close to and refused to let be alone with their fear. You cannot buy what is in that stethoscope. You cannot hire it cheaper. And you surely cannot replace it with a flowchart, though Lord knows they tried. Because 2 years ago, they hired Brooke Maddox. Now I am going to be fair to Brooke, the way I try to be fair to everybody, because the easy version, where she is a villain, is not the true version. And the true version is more useful. Brooke Maddox was about 42 years old, with a business degree from somewhere impressive, and she had never been a nurse, not for one shift, not for 1 hour. She had never emptied a bedpan, or held pressure on a bleed, or sat with a family while a machine decided whether their father was going to make it. She was brought in as a vice president of clinical operations, which is a fancy way of saying she was hired to make the numbers smaller. And she believed, all the way down to her shoes, that a hospital was a business like any other business, and that anything that could not be measured on her dashboard was probably just sentiment, and sentiment was expensive. The first time we met, she was doing her rounds with a clipboard, and she walked up to me at the nurse's station while I was on the phone with a worried daughter. And she did not wait for me to finish. She just started talking over me. And when I held up one finger, just one, to say, "Give me a moment, this is a person," she gave a little tight smile and said to the young administrator beside her, loud enough for me to hear, "We're going to need to work on responsiveness on this unit." Responsiveness. I had been the most responsive thing in that building for 19 years. But she had looked at me, a heavy-set black woman of a certain age in comfortable shoes at a nurse's station, and she had filed me under furniture, the same as everybody upstairs always had. And she had decided that whatever was wrong with her dashboard, it was probably my fault. It got worse from there, the way these things do, one small cut at a time. She called me Marva from the first day, while she called every doctor, doctor. And the younger nurse she liked, a sweet, credentialed girl fresh out of a university program, she called Nurse Whitley. I was Marva, like the woman who cleans your teeth. She would hold meetings about my floor, and not invite me. Then send down decisions made by people who had never worked a night shift in their lives. A consultant she brought in, touring the unit, actually handed me his empty cup and asked me to point him to whoever was in charge of the clinical side, while I was standing there in charge of the clinical side. And once, when a visitor got lost, a man looked right past 3 of my white colleagues and asked me where the housekeeping closet was. And Brooke, who saw it, said nothing, because in her mind, it was an easy mistake to make. What stung worse than any of it was watching what she did with that young nurse she had decided was the future, the one she called Nurse Whitley. Now, that girl was not a bad nurse, and I want to be fair, because none of this was her fault. But Brooke held her up like a trophy, put her on the committees, asked her opinion in the meetings I was never invited to, and the whole building got the message loud and clear. The right kind of nurse was young and credentialed and looked a certain way, and did not come with 30 years of opinions attached. I had trained nurses who would one day be better than I ever was, and watched the hospital promote right on past them for as long as I could remember. You learn to swallow it, but there is a particular ache in being made invisible in the one place where you are, in plain fact, the most essential person standing in the room. It is like being a steel beam inside a wall, holding up the whole house and painted over so that nobody ever has to look at you. Here's the thing about all of that, and I need you to hear me, because this is the part the people who have never lived it cannot understand. Not one of those moments was a crime you could name. Each one was small enough that if I had said something, I would have been the problem. Difficult, sensitive, not a team player. So you let it go, and you let it go. And after 32 years of letting it go, you have trained a whole building to believe that the woman holding it all up is somehow also the woman who does not quite matter. And do you know the strangest part of it? I was good at my job, in a way that made me harder to see, not easier. A floor that runs smoothly looks like a floor where nothing is happening. And a floor where nothing is happening looks like a floor that does not need so many expensive nurses. My own excellence had been turned into the argument against me. The better I did the work, the more invisible the work became, until somebody with a spreadsheet could look at all that hard-won quiet and decide it must not be worth very much. That is the trap that catches the competent. We make it look easy, and then the world believes it was easy. And then the world wonders out loud why it should have to pay for easy. But the disrespect I could have survived, I had survived it my whole life. What I could not survive, what no good nurse can survive, was watching her come for the patients. Brooke had a model, a beautiful model, on a screen, with colors. It said that 5 West was overstaffed relative to benchmark, and that we could safely care for more patients per nurse, and that several of my most experienced nurses, the expensive ones, the ones who had been there 20 and 25 years, could be transitioned and replaced with newer, cheaper staff and a better workflow. On the screen, it worked. The numbers were gorgeous. And I sat in that meeting and I looked at that screen and I felt something cold walk down my spine, because I knew the way I know my own hands, that her gorgeous numbers were going to be paid for in human beings. I tried to tell her. I was respectful, I said, with all the calm I had, that the experienced nurses she wanted to cut were the exact reason our outcomes were good, that a 25-year nurse catches things a 1-year nurse cannot, that you cannot measure the patient who did not die because somebody who knew what she was looking at walked by at the right moment. And Brooke smiled at me, the patient smile you give a child, and she said, "Marva, I appreciate the passion, but we have to make decisions based on data, not anecdotes. We need fresh thinking here, not 30 years of the way we've always done it." Not 30 years of the way we've always done it, as if my 30 years were a bad habit, as if all that knowing were just me being stubborn. And then, a few weeks later, she did the thing I will never forget. We had a patient, an older gentleman, post-surgical, and I did not like the look of him. Nothing on the monitor yet, but I knew. I had seen that exact stillness before. I wanted to hold him another day, watch him close. And Brooke's new protocol, built for efficiency, flagged him for discharge. And when I pushed back, she told me, in front of my own staff, that bed management was an operational decision, not a nursing one, and that I was to stop creating bottlenecks. That man went home. I want you to understand what it cost me to send him. I walked into his room with the discharge papers in my hand. Papers I did not believe in for 1 second. And that gentle old man looked up at me, trusting as a child, and asked if it was really time for him to go home. And I had to put on a smile and tell him yes, sir, while everything in 32 years of me was screaming the opposite. I have done a great many hard things inside that building. Handing that man those papers is one I expect I will answer for someday. He was back in 48 hours. He was back in 48 hours, through the emergency room, in septic shock, and he nearly died. And the only reason he did not is that the night he came back, I happened to be on, and I knew him, and I moved fast. Nobody thanked me. It never went on any dashboard. But I went home that night, and I sat in my car in the parking garage for a long while. And I understood that I was now working in a place that was willing to hurt my patients to make its numbers prettier. And that they had decided my 30 years of knowing was the thing standing in their way. So Brooke offered me what she called a transition package. Early, voluntary, generous, she said. A nice way to step aside and let the new model breathe. She framed it like a gift, like she was doing me a kindness, helping a tired old workhorse out to a sunny pasture. And I want to tell you, I laughed in her face. But the truth I promised you, is that I almost took it. I sat at my kitchen table with those papers, and a voice started up in me. And it was not Brooke's voice. It was worse. It was my own. It said, "Marva, you are 53 years old, and your feet hurt, and your back hurts, and you have been carrying this floor since before that girl Brooke could drive." Maybe she is right. Maybe the world has moved on, and you are the old way. Maybe it is time to stop fighting people who do not want you and go enjoy your grandbabies. Maybe taking the money and walking away with your head high is the dignified thing to do. And I nearly believed it, because that is the cruelest trick they pull on us. They wear you down for years, and then they offer you the door, and they make leaving feel like your own idea, like wisdom, like rest. They get you to fire yourself and call it grace. I sat with those papers until the coffee in my cup went stone cold. And I thought about my own mother, who cleaned houses until her knees gave out and never once got to do work the world bothered to call important. And how proud she had been the day I pinned on my cap, like I had reached up and hung the moon. And I asked myself what it would do to her memory if I let a child with a clipboard talk me into believing that the thing I had given my whole life to was a waste, an old way, a cost to be cut. I was not raised to walk away from a fight I was right about, only because winning it had gotten tiring. But I was tired. I am telling you the whole truth tonight, so I will tell you that part too. I was bone tired, and for one long night, I let myself believe that quitting might be the same thing as peace. It is not. I know the difference now, and I will give it to you for free. Peace is doing the right thing and sleeping fine afterward. Quitting on the people who need you, just to make the hurting stop, is a different thing entirely, and it does not let you sleep at all. What stopped me was a girl named Jada. Jada Ellison was 26 years old, 2 years a nurse, and the best raw talent I had seen come through those doors in a decade. I had taken her under my wing the way somebody once should have taken me, taught her the things the book leaves out, taught her how to listen to a patient with more than her ears. And the evening I was about to sign Brooke's papers, Jada caught me in the break room, and she had clearly heard, because the floor always knows. And she sat down across from me, and she did not say anything for a minute. Then she said, "Miss Marva, if you go, I'm going. And it's not just me. You're the only reason half of us know how to do this job right. You leave, this floor leaves with you. And then who's going to be standing there when somebody's mama is scared?" And she looked at me, this baby, this future, and I saw my whole self in her 30 years ago, before anybody had worn me down. And I knew I could not sign those papers and leave her to do this alone, in a building that had stopped caring whether it did it right. But I also knew I could not stay and be slowly strangled. My judgment overruled. My patience hurt. My voice called a bottleneck. So I did the one thing Brooke and all the people upstairs never once imagined a 53-year-old nurse with an associate's degree would do. I left on my own terms, and I took my knowing with me. There is a community clinic on the north side of the city, in a neighborhood the big systems had mostly forgotten, run by a tired and decent doctor who had been trying for years to keep real care alive for people who needed it most. I had known him a long time. I went to him and I told him I was available, and that man nearly came across his desk. He did not ask about my degree. He knew exactly what 32 years was worth. He made me the director of nursing for his clinic, gave me the authority to build it right. And for the first time in years, I went to work in a place that treated my knowing like the treasure it was. I did not slink off into retirement. I did not let them make me small. I just took the most valuable thing in that hospital, which was me, and I gave it to people who would honor it. And then I watched, from across town, what happened to 5 West without me. It did not blow up all at once. It came apart the way a sweater comes apart. One pulled thread, then another, then the whole thing in your lap. My experienced nurses, the ones Brooke had been so eager to transition, started leaving because the new model ran them off their feet and the new floor had no one steady at the center of it. Then the newer nurses, overwhelmed and unsupported, started leaving too. The floor that had run like a clock for 19 years started missing things. Little things first, then bigger ones. Falls, medication errors, a patient who sat too long. One of my finest nurses, a woman named Pat, who had been there 23 years and could run a code in her sleep, put in her notice on a Tuesday and was gone by the end of the month. And she told me later she cried in her car the day she walked out of a place she had given half her life to, because it had stopped being a place where you were allowed to do right by people. After Pat went, 2 more followed her out the door. The float pool could not keep up. The agency nurses they brought in to plug the holes were good people, every one, but they did not know the floor. They did not know which families needed an extra minute of patience, and which post-op patients always tried to get up too soon, and which quiet ones were the ones to watch. They did not carry the 1,000 small pieces of knowing that had lived in the heads of the very women Brooke had been so proud to cut. A confused patient pulled out a line one night with nobody steady there who would have caught it coming. A family filed a complaint, and then another family did. The floor that had run like a clock for 19 years was running like a thing with no one at the center of it, which is precisely what it had become. The readmission numbers, the ones Brooke loved so much, started climbing, and then they started climbing fast. Because it turns out that when you send people home a day too early to save $1, a great many of them come right back sicker, and that costs $10. The doctors, who had relied on my nurses without ever quite admitting it, began to revolt, led by an old internist named Dr. Feld, a gruff, white-haired man who had worked beside me for 20 years and who finally stood up in a medical staff meeting and said, in front of everybody, that the unit had been gutted of the only people who knew what they were doing and that somebody was going to get killed. Brooke's beautiful dashboard, the one with all the colors, turned red, and the people upstairs, the ones who signed the checks and answered to the board, finally started asking the question they should have asked 2 years before. They started asking what had changed, and the answer, when they traced it all the way back, was a single name: mine. Dr. Feld came to find me at the clinic. He drove all the way across the city, this proud old man, and he sat in my little office with the secondhand furniture, and he said, "Marva, it's a disaster over there. They know it now. They want you to come back." And he was quiet a moment, and then he said the thing that I think cost him the most to say, because men like him are not raised to say it. He said, "I should have spoken up for you a long time ago. We all leaned on you, and we let them treat you like you were nothing. I'm sorry." I did not gloat. There was no joy in it, none, because in between Brooke's screen and that apology were real patients who had been hurt, and that is never something to celebrate. But I will tell you, I did not jump up and run back either. I had spent 32 years being taken for granted, and I was not about to walk back into that building because they were in a bind. So I told Dr. Feld I would talk to them, and when they called me up to that office, the same office where they had once decided I did not matter, I sat down across from them, and I did the thing my whole life had been preparing me to do. I named my terms. I told them I would come back, but not as Marva, the charge nurse they could overrule and ignore. I would come back as the director of nursing for that division, with real authority, with a seat at the table where the decisions about my floor actually got made. I told them that the staffing model that had gutted the unit was going in the trash, and that experience was going to be treated as the asset it was, and that no business administrator who had never held a dying man's hand was ever again going to overrule a nurse on a question of patient safety. I told them I was not negotiating those points because I had watched what happened to a hospital that thought it could run on a spreadsheet, and so had they. And I told them I was not doing it for me. I was doing it for the Jadas, so that the next young nurse with a gift and no fancy degree would walk into a building that knew what she was worth. They agreed to all of it. Of course they did. They had seen the alternative. And I made them put it in writing. I had learned that much in 53 years. A promise made by frightened people in the middle of a crisis has a way of evaporating the moment the crisis passes. So I made them sign it, every term, before I ever set one foot back on that floor. Not because I doubted they meant it in the moment, because I knew the moment would pass, and the budget pressure would come creeping back. And one day, there would be another Brooke with another beautiful screen, and the only thing that protects nurses and patients from the next beautiful screen is a piece of paper that gives the people at the bedside a real and permanent voice. I did not fight that fight for myself. I was 53 years old. I fought it for whoever would be standing where I was standing 30 years from now. Brooke Maddox did not apologize. I want to be honest about that, because the movie version is not the real one. People like Brooke rarely say the words. Her model had failed, and the failure spoke for itself. And not long after, she moved on to optimize some other place that had not yet learned what I could have told them for free. I did not need her apology. The empty floor had apologized for her. Every single day I was gone. I went back. I brought Jada with me as my right hand. I made that girl a charge nurse before her 30th birthday. And I told her the same thing I am about to tell you. The knowing she carried could not be taught in any classroom, and it could not be cut from any budget. And her job, when her own turn came around, was to plant her feet and refuse to let anybody call the next young woman just anything at all. And the first thing I did, the very first thing, was walk back onto 5 West with my 30-year-old stethoscope around my neck, and I stood in the doorway, and I read that floor the way I have always read it, and I started, patient by patient, putting it back together. So let me leave you with this. Every one of you who has ever been called just anything, just a nurse, just an aide, just a secretary, just a mother, just the help. There is no such thing as just. The just is a lie that people tell about the very person holding everything up. Because it is cheaper to believe you are replaceable than to pay you what you are worth. But here is what is true, and I have watched it prove itself with my own eyes. You can let them underestimate you. You can even let them push you out the door. But you cannot give them your knowing. That stays with you. It walks out the door on your 2 feet, and the place you leave behind finds out, sooner or later, exactly what it was standing on the whole time. They will measure everything except the thing that mattered, and the thing that mattered was you. I am Marva Sinclair. I have heard 10,000 hearts through a 30-year-old stethoscope, and I will tell you the truest thing I know. They called me just a nurse. I was the floor. And the day they forgot it, the floor reminded them. If you have ever been the one holding it all together while they handed the credit and the title to somebody else, get down in the comments and tell me your years. Tell me how long you have been the glue. Somebody scrolling tonight is tired and being made to feel small, and they need to see a whole room of us who know exactly what they carry. And if this one found you, you already know how to find the next. Go put your feet up. You have earned it. And do not you ever let anybody put the word just in front of who you are.